May I please call up on stage the moderator of this session, Most Venerable Geshe Dorje Damdul, Director of Tibet House. And the speakers of this session are Dr. Sunur Verma, Mr. Chanrav Buren Bayar, Mr. Benny Leo Woon Khin, and Professor Monsak Shaivira Dek. Please come to the dais.
Welcome you all to the first panel of this second International Buddhist the Media Conclave. And so this morning's session, the first session, inaugural session, made my work way easier for all of us. And so the topic here for this session is role of Buddhist media and communication in the 21st century. And so although the topic that I got is just says role of the media and communication in the 21st century, then just looking at the broader the topic, I sense that it should be Buddhist media and communication. And in this regard, we have here with me 5 prominent speakers for this first panel from different countries. And given that the Human Development Index is a summary measure of the average achievement in key dimensions of human development, a long and healthy life, being knowledgeable, and having a decent standard of living, the 3 points. And the standard of media and communication marks the standard of civilization and human development. This is extremely important. During the tea break, I was just sharing with some random visitors that the world is like a school, and the people of the world, citizens of the world, they are like the school children, and the media is like the professors or the teachers. And at times, the teachers can be extremely kind and extremely positive to direct the students the proper way. That, for example, all the speakers whose CVs I got the opportunity to read last night. And these are clear indications that the teachers that they met in their life, they're very positive, very compassionate, visionary. So this is the role of the media. And whereas some students, after graduating, they would only have only negative things to talk about the teachers in the schools. This is extremely sad. While the teacher is a noun, and the verb associated with that is teach. Teach what? Bad things or good things? Bad things you don't have to teach. People have the tendencies, bad influences everywhere. But the good things, so rare. Is with this in mind, the media has a huge responsibility to think of the media people as like teachers or the professors, lecturers, and so forth in this small world, school-like small world, where all the citizens of the world, they're like school children. So with this in mind, given that these are the facets of human development, that a standard of media and communication marks the standard of civilization and human development. The main goal of the various media, and with no exception to Buddhist media, I'm sure you all agree with me, is to enhance the well-being of the world, as highlighted as the third of the 17 SDGs, which is good health and well-being, which UNO adopted in 2015 and put to force in 2016. Buddhist media, and this is my personal view, the Buddhist media can offer two kinds of services to the mankind. One for the Buddhist and the other for the secular world. The first, while the first purpose is not to be compromised, yes, to nurture the youngsters, and so they nurture the Buddhist youngsters, but the second one, service for the secular world, which is to work for the welfare of the world at large, is exceptionally important, especially relevant in today's time, the digital world, digital era. With respect to the first part of the service, we cannot force the Buddhist youngsters, we cannot force them to be Buddhist. We cannot force them to be Buddhist. It is not old-time era. Today is the era of freedom, liberty, civilization, and democracy. It is the digital era where the libraries of information are easily available, and that too instantly. We cannot go back to the dark ages of the rule by fear. It can be done only through education. As I said earlier, again, the media is the educators. For the survival of Buddhism, media can play a great role in educating the Buddhist youngsters skillfully. So the media plays an amazing role. When you talk about the advantages of the media, disadvantages of the media, so one of which is that where the people, they are constantly fed with negative information, they go into depression. During the COVID-19, I remember in Tibet House, which is quite nearby here, anybody who likes to visit us, please visit. It's in Lodi Road, and it's a beautiful place. So there was one lady, Indian lady, old lady, elderly lady, and because that she did not have a place to stay at that time, I offered her a place there. You can stay there. And COVID lockdown, she was constantly watching the movie, the media, news. And after a few days, she came with so much of mental stress and tension. And I said, what happened? She says that the world is falling apart and there's so much stress in her mind. So I said, okay, first thing that you do is cut down on watching the television. This is the first thing that you do. And then move around the Tibetan campus, move around, just do some exercises, or say some mantras, or talk to the Tibetan staff. So this is what she did. So this is where the disadvantages of the media, and of course there are so many advantages of media. And so today here, particularly is a gathering of the conclave of the media people. So with this in mind, with respect to the first part of the service, we cannot force the Buddhist youngsters to be Buddhist, and it is a digital era where libraries of information are easily available. We cannot go back to the dark ages. It can be done only through education. For the survival of Buddhism, the media can play a great role in educating the Buddhist youngsters skillfully, not by force. And as for the second service, with respect to the service to the secular world, recently I watched a video clip of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, where His Holiness was addressing the Tibetan Buddhist leaders some years ago. And His Holiness, okay, this is something that we all need to hear, listen to, and contemplate. His Holiness has very clearly indicated that if the Buddha were to be alive today, let me repeat it, if the Buddha were to be alive today with us, the Buddha will for sure encourage us to promote universal ethics, secular ethics, universal ethics, a code of conduct applicable and acceptable to all human beings across the board of humanities, beyond Buddhism, inclusive of non-believers and believers alike. He very strongly made this statement in front of all the Tibetan Buddhist leaders, in sending a message that we should not be outdated. It is a digital world where whole world becomes like one entity. That the whole world will come to know what is happening there, to the east, to the west, amongst youngsters, elders. So with this in mind, the Buddha, Lord Ram, Prophet Muhammad, Jesus Christ, Lord Mahavir, Guru Nanak, if all of them were here today, no doubt they will be so happy to promote universal ethics. Ethics, a code of conduct to be embraced by everyone, not exclusively by Buddhists. So their job for the emergence on the planet Earth is not to dictate, promote the religion, but to promote the humanity. That is so important. We should not forget it. So with this in mind, promotion of universal ethics alongside educating the Buddhist youngsters in Buddhist philosophy and psychology is a very important task of Buddhist media today in the 21st century. I know that there are many in Buddhist media who take initiatives to promote the second kind of service. I mentioned, for example, I know the Brother Benny so well the last many years. And seeing such media people is a great inspiration for all of us, that there's hope for the world. And seeing the negative news, distorted information through the media, it really saddens. The world has no hope for the future. So the thing is that here, under the auspices of IBC and the Vivekananda International Foundation, that all the people, like-minded people from the media, we are put together and educate ourselves, exchange, learn from each other, how to make this meeting a productive, meaningful, that we grow in our thinking, so that how we impart information to the children like the world citizens can be more meaningful, that they grow to be more compassionate, to be more inclusive, to see the world as one entity rather than see the world as fragmented and broken. I know that there are many in Buddhist media who take initiatives. I mentioned the service to the secular world at large. Buddhist scholars and media people effectively use media to promote Universal Ethics program, which today takes the shape of Social Emotional Ethical Learning. I'm sure that many of you are aware of that program, Social Emotional Ethical Learning. And His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, is extremely strong that we now have to move beyond Buddhism, beyond religion, to embrace the whole humanity. So what embraces the humanity, the whole humanity, is universal ethics. I remember His Holiness the Dalai Lama spoke about this since as early as the late 1990s. And then 2012, before 2012, it was implemented in other institutions in Canada. And 2012, it was implemented in Delhi University. Universal ethics. Then it used to be referred to as the secular ethics. And at the suggestion, recommendation of many other people, it was changed to universal ethics to embrace religion, non-religious beliefs, science, for the welfare of the humanity. So this is the social, now having taken the shape of social, emotional, ethical learning, C-learning. And from my many years of experience with interacting with the people, and how one person, for example, say, as a teacher, the media people as teachers, you interact with the people, and there are two things of doing that. Number one is giving the information, oh, this is happening there, that is happening there, and sometimes they distort the information. But many good media, they give the information. This is one thing. Number two is, in the course of giving the information, you change the mind of the people to become positive. To change the mind of the people to be more inclusive, to be more embracing. This is what the media can do. Whereas even the teachers, some teachers, they just impart information. What's in the book, you impart it, and thus they worry that they may not finish the course in time. Whereas some teachers, they are extremely dynamic, who could see beyond the syllabus. In the course of imparting information, they change the mind of the children to be positive, to think of the world. For example, like this morning, what Mr. Abhijit said, how you see things in relative terms, not just information. To see things relative terms with a life, not like a dead information, with full of life. So there, the student's mind, they're being affected. They feel that, okay, that makes sense. So they find joy in what they're learning. Likewise, the media. How you impart the information. Imparting the information, one very just, dry, cold information, or living information, where anybody who just reads it feels elevated, feels light, feels hopeful. That is so important. That is the responsibility of a positive, wholesome, constructive media. And now today, again, this morning, Mr. Abhijit Ji talked about the artificial intelligence. And Mr. Fong, where are you? Mr. Fong? Yes, over there. Mr. Fong there. And I was so impressed. He approached me online. We are meeting for the first time in person. He approached me online. And he said that I'm from media and I have nothing to do with Tibetan Buddhism. But I went to His Holiness the Dalai Lama's teaching and I did not learn anything. One thing that I still remember is that he said something about Nalanda. Then he thought that I have nothing to do with the Tibetan Buddhism, Mahayana Buddhism. I just learned this word Nalanda. And somehow I got a feeling that this has so many things to offer to the world. It is my responsibility as a media person to see how to promote this. And I was so glad that Mr. Abhijit Ji this morning, he rightly picked that up, Mr. Fong, and he mentioned about this to all of you. Artificial intelligence is an amazing thing. At the same time, it can be amazingly destructive. Can be amazing constructive, can be amazing destructive. So what I would say is that particularly attending this conference organized by the IBC and the Vivekananda International Foundation. So no doubt the people here, you have a good heart to promote, to promote the citizens of the world in a constructive way. So we should think of two things. One, yes, how to take care of the Buddhist youngsters. At the same time, how to take care of the whole world. Go beyond Buddhism, as His Holiness always reinforced. So, artificial intelligence is another breakthrough invention of the modern world. The use of artificial intelligence with correct information, number one, correct information. Number two, systematic information. Number three, with a mode of communication in the contemporary language and the taste of the contemporary audience by the media people. is very important. It is, if this were to be adopted, the Buddhist media, like any other media, can serve the world greatly. It's not that the Buddhist media is the best. It's not that the Buddhism is the best. Buddhism is just one aspect of the service to the humanity. There are so many aspects to the world, the humanity. We need to encourage all these aspects of the world, not only Buddhism. So, with this, we are here to listen to different points of view from 5 speakers. As I said earlier, last night, I was just going through the biographies of the CVs of the speakers here, and I was really enthralled to see that it's very rich, coming together of the information from the different parts of the world, different countries. And what we have here is that we have the speakers. We have 5 of them, and each will have 10 minutes, not more. And I request the speakers to kindly stick to the time by being succinct and to the point. For the first speaker, we have Dr. Sunur Verma, and let me quickly read his biography. Dr. Sunur Verma is a senior international development strategist and global health diplomat with over 25 years of experience. As the president of the Himalayan Dialogues in Nepal, Dr. Sunur is highly regarded for his expertise in strategic crisis and leadership communication. His skills in complex coalition building have made him a key player in Track 2 diplomacy, where he has supported peace processes in Southeast Europe and South Asia. Dr. Sunur has provided strategic advice to leading organizations such as WHO, UNICEF, UNHCR, UN Women, Hug Geneva, and Cambridge University on advocacy, complex coalition building, and resource mobilization. He has led emergency communication responses to major crises, including tsunamis, avian influenza, and COVID-19, and has curated strategic partnerships with parliamentarians across Malaysia, Macedonia, Kosovo, Germany, Switzerland, Australia, and Nepal. His mentorship and coaching in crisis communication has been pivotal for many ministers, parliamentarians, and government spokespersons globally. He has also taught global health for Boston University. In a previous avatar, very interesting, Dr. Sunur practiced cardiothoracic surgery. He's the founder and series editor of the Namaste series of books, which bring modern, made in India, inspirational stories to the world. Dr. Sunur, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So, as you heard, in a previous avatar, I was a cardiothoracic surgeon, so some of my reflexes come from there. And I am a practitioner, so most of my interventions would be from the perspective of a practitioner. I'm delighted that the organizers have arranged for a massive clock right in front of us, so I'll be aware of the time. Thank you. So very quickly moving into what changes have been happening, we have heard also in the morning and also in the introductory remarks of the chairperson about what we wish from the media and what the media should be doing. I would like to talk about the changes and the context in which the media is operating. So if we look at the changes among the consumers of media, there are significant changes. Number one, our attention span has significantly gone down, which is documented. My daughters laugh at me when I type on my phone because I type with one finger. The new generation feels the reflex has to be able to type with 2 fingers. There is a shift in what kind of media we are choosing to consume. So Mr. Haldar spoke about the WHO study on misinformation, how negative headlines attract viewers more. This is not something which the media can do anything about, but this is what the consumers do. This is the human behavior. We are looking for sensational headlines. Anything that is sensational is what gets clicked and what gets read. So that is, in sum, what the changes that we see among the consumptions, the consumers of media. The changes in the media itself are related to technology and platforms. Print media is slowly dying out. Many of my generation were in denial for very long. We insisted that we loved the smell of newspapers in the morning when we read the newspapers. Gradually, that smell has evaporated. We get the news pushed to us on our mobile phones in the form of SMSs. Visual form has taken precedence. So if you remember the saying that a picture speaks 1,000 words is now commercially viable. Instead of reading, we are scrolling and we are looking at audio visuals that are available. We're looking for simplified content, which makes it very difficult for academicians to communicate with the common public, because the public wants short, precise, and simplified content. The third aspect which is changing, or which has changed very rapidly, is a result of globalization, into which all of us have bought. Whether we like it or not, whether we like the consequences of globalization or not, we have bought into it by tying our market economies to globalization. Now, in globalization, what is happening? Number one, media houses are being bought up by international entities. Most of the platforms are owned by high-income countries. We saw in the UK recently when there were riots on the streets, and the government was trying to calm the situation down. The CEO of X, or Twitter, posted to his 127 million followers around the world that there are civil riots happening in the UK. The government still chose not to ban X or Twitter, but that's a tough choice to make. The question is, what choice would have been the right choice? So the ownership of media and the international ownership of media is a critical issue which needs to be addressed when we talk of what the media does. The other thing which we must acknowledge at some point is we always refer to the media as the fourth pillar. During COVID, we saw that actually it is not the fourth pillar. It is one of the three pillars. Either media is government or media is private. We all very well know that the private sector has one incentive, which is profit. Its performance is measured by profit, whether you deliver value to the shareholders. Our pension funds are tied to those shares. So we are all in a chain delivering that profit. So the intent comes through that aspect of profit. So these are the major changes, the three wheels of change that are happening. And very often at meetings, there are two expressions I hear which always sound very abstract when speakers talk about them. One is the international community. So it's a vague cloud out there. The international community did this. The international community did that. Similarly, when it comes to the media, it is the media which needs to change. The media which needs to be mindful. Who is the media? When you look at the camera persons at the back of this room, who were the first to arrive, the last to leave for the coffee break, and the first to come back, who've been standing 2 hours behind their cameras. The reporter who's going to rush out of this meeting at 4 p.m. to file a report. The editor who would have to make a tough choice which report to include. And the chief editor who would be told at the last minute by the owner of the media house which news to exclude. So it is people behind all these terms. So when I look at the Buddhist principles, and as a practitioner, I would try to look at some solutions to explore and to address. Buddhism talks about interdependence over independence. So media does not function in a vacuum. Each headline, each story has a ripple effect within the community. That needs to be realized. Second is mutual understanding, another tenet of Buddhism. Now, when it comes to mutual understanding, I think this forum, the second edition, is an outstanding example of creating a safe dialogue space where knowledge and ideas can flow freely without fear. And that is a critical space to be safeguarded, to be nurtured further. Mindful communication is something we heard in the morning quite a bit. Let's talk about the practicalities of mindful communication, especially those of us who come from resource constrained settings. It is very easy to say, let's be mindful. For someone who is hungry, who is ill, that is not a very realistic suggestion. When we talk of the media, we are sitting in a cosmopolitan city in the capital of a country that has the fastest growing economy, that has an impressive demographics. But do we forget there's a media outside the cosmopolitan city? If you look at investigative journalism today, it is mainly restricted to the vernacular media in the country. At the national level, we barely see investigative journalism. So, mindful communication in terms of practical implementation, I feel that is where we need partnerships with educational institutions that build professional media persons. A network of those institutions coming together where we can advocate and influence the curriculum. Those who are in the media circle, those of you who have been to a newsroom, I must say it is very similar to a cardiac surgery operating room or to a high-end restaurant's kitchen, where 2 minutes of difference changes the game, right? Which means that those who are working there, they need to be protected. They need to be healthy. We heard mindfulness. We also heard Mr. Gurumurthy talk about mindlessness. The common word among the two is mind. So if the minds of the media persons, those who are going to become media persons, they need techniques and skills to protect themselves from all that comes on their professional journey. As a surgeon, it was my seniors who gradually taught me how to abstract myself from the outcome of an operation. They taught me how to take power naps between two surgeries. So for each profession, techniques on how to persevere, how to preserve your mental health, how to exercise mental hygiene is critical. And that is a skill that makes you more marketable because you're healthier, that makes you more desirable as a team member because you're positive, right? So working around the curricula on media education with skills that come from the Buddhist thinking on how to preserve your mental health. I would also like to touch upon the teachings of Swami Vivekananda as we are at the Vivekananda International Foundation. Swami Vivekananda has talked about courage and bravery when you speak. This should not be misinterpreted as just random and rash talking, but mindful talking which is based on truth. And this is once again, this is a tenet which would be very helpful when working with media institutions, especially the academia, on building fact-checking mechanisms and integrating that into the training of our professional media persons. Fact-checking can only be afforded by rich and highly advanced media houses. Most of us are suffering from misinformation and rumors in the form of health misinformation or in the form of misinformation around security, politics, etc. So with this, I would just like to summarize that working with a number of elected officials around the world in emergency situations, what I have found is that communication really works among those who communicate in a calm, thoughtful, and intentioned way. Around the world, we have seen during COVID-19 what communication worked and what did not. There were a couple of common elements. One is communicating on time, not delaying communication in the belief that people will understand. Number two is communicating truthfully what you know and communicating what you don't know yet. And number three, informing the public, what are you doing to figure out what you don't know? I would just close by saying, echoing the words of Mr. Haldal today, and also Mr. Gurumurthy spoke about this, the importance of evidence-based communication. We are gradually living in a world that is more and more science-based. Our media fraternity comes more and more from the non-science base. Most of our politicians in South Asia come from a non-science background. Similarly with our faith-based leaders, science is seen as a contra to faith. These are the narratives we need to change. And last, I would say that the demonopolization of media is actually a good phenomenon. The fact that Mr. Bhutia, the chief guest today, Mr. Ricky Cage, who's sitting across here, we know not only their creativity, his music or his football skills, but we know his journey, we know his story. We heard today how Sikkim has inspired Mr. Bhutia to make certain choices in life. So demonopolization of media is good. Content creators is good. The question is, can we offer better content that prevails? Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sumer. Thank you so much. There are a lot of amazing information that we need to learn. I'm just wondering if IBC can later think of compiling all these into a book. That would be really very helpful, because there are a lot of very constructive information. And I'll also thank you for winding up on time. So next we have Mr. Burenbayar Chandraf, and he again, as he's a multifaceted, has the biography is extremely rich. Last night I was going through this, I was so impressed. So firstly, he served as a senior manager in the Asian Buddhist Conference for Peace, and also he served as a minister counselor, Embassy of Mongolia in India, and then he served in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Mongolia. I'm not going to go through all the details. They are his affiliation, like being the advisor and public relation manager in the International Association for Mongol Studies, and the founder of and chief editor of the Mongolian Observer, and then the chief international relations and the cooperation division, and then the advisor, foreign relations and the cooperation department, parliament secretariat. And one thing which I was very impressed was his being the press and the public relations officer in the office of the president of Mongolia. I just quickly read this for our information. It's very interesting. He translated and interpreted for the president of Mongolia during his meeting with foreign dignitaries visiting the country, and also accompanied the president on his official and state foreign visits, providing interpretation, advice on media relations, and coordinating with foreign and Mongolian media. So it goes on and on. So I'd like to stop here to listen to him. And Mr. Burnett, you have the 10 minutes. Okay. Yes.
Namaskar, good afternoon, Sam Baskano. I'm extremely delighted that Dr. Arvind Gupta, VIF president, he was in Mongolia at one time. We had worked together, and he's here, and I'm very happy to be here at VIF. And thank you very much, Most Venerable Shaste Khensur Rinpoche, Janche Choten. He was our vice president of ABCP. Mr. Abhijit Haldar, IBC Director General, most venerable monks, lamas and nuns, ladies and gentlemen. I had a long, I don't know why I sent my long CV. So I'm not a media person as such. I've been doing a lot of different work, and I was in the media too. When you look at the topic, the role of media in the 21st century, it's a huge topic, and we can only take one or two aspects of such a huge, vast topic as such, and given the time, just 10 minutes, I'm going to be making a PowerPoint presentation, and I'll be skipping some of the slides, but I'll be sharing my paper, which is about 20 pages, and my PowerPoint presentation. But I would like to touch on Mongolian media, the religion of Mongolia. And I don't know how many people know that Mongolia is a Buddhist country. We were an atheist country. We are now a Buddhist country. And I think media has a very, very important role in disseminating what Buddha taught us and what we need to do to follow Buddha's teachings. This is the content of my presentation, introduction I've just done, religious tolerance. That's very important to know, this has been in Mongolia for many, many years. And then it goes into history and retrospect, laws and legislation, because we are living in a country or countries where the law-abiding citizens we have to create. Religion in Mongolia, it has a turbulent history. The state of media in Mongolia, which is now free for the last 30 years. Media and religion, what can media do and what can religion, work with media? And then the conclusion. I was very interested, like when we received this concept paper, that we would like to, one day conclave, will establish an Asian Buddhist Media Network, Buddhist social media networking in Asia. The world is getting smaller with all the social media that's coming along, And I think this kind of networking is very important. We come to know each other, then we exchange ideas, and then we start working what we need to do in terms of our philosophy, Buddhist philosophy. How do we media interact? How do we work together? I think unity is very important even among the media fraternity, right? Dr. Sunur said that, somebody else, I think Guru Murthy said, media has both positive and negative roles, and Dr. Geshe Dorjit said that media is constructive and destructive. It's very true. The kind of media that we were talking about, mindful communication, constructive. If it's mindless communication, it's destructive. So I think this is what we have to understand. The collapse of the Soviet system in Mongolia in the 1930s also led to democratic transformations in the country. With these transformations, there came freedom of belief as well as freedom of press. And then the first free press was called Arthchilan, meaning democracy, ushering in a multi-party system, plurality in the country. Now, religious tolerance, as I was saying, this concept actually came very long time back, from the time of Chinggis Khan. We call him Chinggis Khan, but the rest of the world call him Genghis Khan. One of the, I think, experts on Chinggis Khan is American scholar Jack Weatherford. In his book called The Chinggis Khan and the Making of the Modern World, he had written that Chinggis Khan decreed complete and total religious freedom for everyone. And John Mann also says the same thing. In the 13th century, we had the Mongolian capital called Karakorum. I'm sure many of you have heard about it. They used to have, I think, different areas allocated to different religions. So all religions could practice at the same time. Preference was not given to any one particular religion, although at that time, shamanism was a predominating kind of a belief. Just history and retrospect. Mongolia is a traditional Buddhist country. Geological excavation, archaeological excavations, evidence that I think even during BC, Buddhism had come to Mongolia through India. And there are scholars who argue that the history of Buddhism, there were ups and downs 3 times in the history of Mongolia. The last one came in 1990, when we had the democratic transformations following the collapse of the Soviet Union, following the so-called perestroika, glasnost by Gorbachev, and Mongolia became a free and democratic country, and also we started having free press and the freedom of belief. We had dark periods in the history. In the 1930s, as you know, Stalin had launched political persecution in Russia. And we had a ripple effect in Mongolia too. There were political repressions in the 30s, which culminated in 1937. There were more than 1,000 temples and monasteries, Buddhist monasteries. They were all destroyed except for a few ones, which are still running in Ulaanbaatar now. And there were thousands of lamas were forced to disrobe, and many prominent lamas were summarily executed, branded as anti-revolutionaries. As you know, in Marxist communist theory, religion is dubbed as opium of the people. And that's what the ruling party, the Mongolian People's Revolutionary Party, which is a Communist party until 1990, made Mongolia an atheist country from 1930. Well, laws and legislation are important to regulate social behavior, social interaction. And in 1992, we had a first democratic constitution, and I'll go further, let you know. And then we had different laws, and now we have a law on Mongolian law on relationship between the state and the monastery, which was passed in 1993. Mongolia is a secular country. It doesn't say that one particular religion is an official religion, but the National Security Council of Mongolia in 1994 says that Buddhism is a predominating religion in Mongolia. Here. And even the concept of national security says maximum support for research and studies on Buddhism, which protected and preserved intellectual civilization in the Mongols for many centuries. So these are actually embedded in our laws and legislation. That is meaning that Buddhism is the predominating religion, a religion that is interwoven in the fabric of customs and traditions and thinking of the Mongols for centuries. Again, we have this, as I said, there are articles and provisions which support Buddhism, studies Buddhism, and etc. in our laws and legislation. In the past, it was more shamanism, venerating the nature, and this is part of the Mongolian customs also. It's embedded in a way of life, venerating the environment. And now we talk about, then we have Buddhism, then we have Orthodox Christians, and we have Muslims, we have even Catholic Christians, we have the modern day Mormons, and then we even have Christianites in Mongolia, a country with just 3.3 million population. I'll go here. Religion in Mongolia, Buddhist 86.2%. That was in 2010. And 2020 it was 87.1. There's a growth, slight growth. If you look at the Christians, 3.5, 2.2. There's a drop also. The thing is that the way the pastors and the Christians and the missionaries approach the people, they actually normally target the poor people. Now they want it back, So there is a decline in the number of Christians. And you can see Muslims are very small. Now just media, population of 3.5 million, we have 434 media outlets, a huge army of journalists, about 4,337, I think, journalists. And internet is also growing. Now, there's a scholar at one of the universities. She had done a study in how many journalists actually write about Buddhism. And I think, I'm just finishing. So there are two media outlets in Mongolia, basically. One is this, it's a family radio 104.5. It's a Christian radio station. They promote Christianity. Before that, we used to have a TV called Eagle TV. And they used to tell a lot about from the Bible, the New Testament, and the Old Testament. And the only Buddhist media outlet that we have is at the Ganden Monastery. The Ganden Monastery, the central monastery, the center of the Mongolian Buddhists. And we have a Ganden TV. We have somebody speaking this afternoon. And then we have the newspaper, and we also have the FM radio. Now, another thing, we go into social media. That social media platform is really coming up, Recently, we had the Kala Chakra in Mongolia. And Ganden had been very active, and they have about 92,000 followers, and they have been promoting Kala Chakra. And you can see, we also have another group of, in the social media, it's called the followers of the Lord Buddha movie. I think there was a 55 series of Buddhist movie on the life of Buddha. It started in 2020. It's still going in different channels. And many people, young people now, it's reached the Mongolian young people, and they say that, well, Buddhism is not that a complicated religion. It's very simple to follow, from what the movie shows. So, and there's a lot of coverage of there is no biased or no discriminatory coverage in media, but sometimes the media tend to go beyond the board, like they look for sensation. For example, there were media coverages about some abuses at the Gandhar monastery made headlines. But one thing, the 10th Bogd Khan of Mongolia, who is the theocrat ruler, he was recognized by His Holiness, and they wrote a lot about him. So just what I'm saying is, conclusion is that research shows that journalists as a whole in the country do not have a deep understanding of Buddhism. This is from a research which was conducted by one of the scholars, So the media has a role to tell the media people what they need to know about Buddhism. We don't have any model. Our messages must be simple in common man's language. Facebook, Kandang, they use very complicated language. It's in Mongolian, but very difficult to understand. But if you look at Christian messages, Bible, Testaments, very easy to understand. So I think our media has to work in that. And finally, to wind up, I would like to thank IBC for an opportunity to speak. I have my paper, which will be, I think, published and distributed to others. But I think what we need to really do is work together, hand in hand, and exchange ideas. We have to learn from each other. And frankly speaking, we Mongolians have a lot to learn from others, from all of you. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chandra, Baran Bayer. Thank you so much for your lucid presentation. Next, we have Mr. Dibanjan Roy Chaudhary. Reading his biography, Mr. Chaudhary is the diplomatic editor at the Economic Times and has special interests in Bangladesh, Myanmar, Southeast Asia, besides Eurasia, Russia, and Arab world. He has been a journalist since 2001 and has worked with UNI, Kuwait News Agency, and Mail Today on the India Today group. Dibanjan is ILVP Fellow, USA, besides being a fellow in Singapore, Taiwan, Germany. He has presented papers at the Russia International Affairs Council and lectured at the Higher School of Economics, Moscow. Mr. Dibanjan, the stage is yours, 10 minutes.
Thank you. I should first admit that my exposure to Buddhism is very, very limited, except every morning I'm exposed to or listen to the chanting by my wife who practices Nichiren Buddhism. But I didn't get into the details of that because, maybe I have very limited patience to practice that. And the other exposure to Buddhism is I was born and brought up in Kolkata, and very near to where I stay in South Kolkata there is a very I don't say famous, but there's a pagoda, and which I found very peaceful actually. This is near the swimming lakes in Kolkata, and therefore I used to always like visiting there. And my travels to Southeast Asia has taken me to some of the temples which are not much known to the Indian public or Indian media. One, for example, is the temple of Borobudur in Indonesia. And I was exposed to Borobudur rather through the name of a hotel called Hotel Borobudur in Jakarta. So they named it after the temple. So I am a journalist who writes on foreign and strategic affairs for the last 15 years. So I would focus, I'll keep it short and I'll focus mostly on how, Indian media is quite oblivious to certain things of Buddhism and its civilizational ethos. Firstly, it is not, if I may use the word quote unquote, very sexy subject for the Indian media. Today, the way the pace of the media has changed, and as Dr. Verma explained, in the demonopolization of media. So there might be some journalists who are in Tier 2, Tier 3 cities who might be doing niche work on certain subjects on Buddhism or certain aspects of religion, but largely mainstream media gives it a miss. They would rather kind of or cover it only episodically, in the sense when the US Foreign Relations Committee chairperson or US senators go and meet His Holiness the Dalai Lama in Dharamshala, and the kind of statements probably they had given which had created sensation because it was directed against a particular country which borders India, and therefore the interest is created in Indian media only for a couple of hours actually. The television and the social media probably doesn't get into the depth of it because they have very limited patience, very limited understanding of the Buddhism and how it originated from India. There is a very good map here I found for the first time, in the sense maybe IBC has been doing it, which is the spread of Buddha Dhamma from the Ganges Valley, India. I had put it on my Twitter handle this morning, and I feel that this is something which should be spread among the Indian media, and Indian media should also, in terms of, whenever they're talking about the spread of Buddhism from India, should be popularized, particularly through the social media channels, be it Twitter or X now or the Instagram, because this is something which is, I guess, missing in the narrative of common citizens of India. I mean, they are not very aware of how it spread and the journeys it took via Afghanistan to Central Asia and to Sri Lanka, and from there to the Southeast Asia. This is something that needs to be kind of popularized through social media, through even non-mainstream media, which if they take it up, if there's a dedicated channel on that, so that would be really helpful. As I understand from the panelists and also from my fellow panelists here, there are a lot of dedicated channels on Buddhism and its principles in various countries where people, there are largely Buddhists, if Thailand, Myanmar, Sri Lanka, Cambodia, Laos, probably in Vietnam also, I understand in Taiwan, South Korea, as well as in Mongolia. That is missing in India. I mean, there are channels, TV channels who focus on civilizational religions, but not really on Buddhism. So that is something that should be explored, if not by mainstream media, but by media houses which want to go explore into that area. Often as a practicing journalist, and one is forced to look into areas which is like no news. Good news is no news. I mean, that has been kind of that is the motto of all journalists world over. If a dog bites a man, it's not a news. If a man bites a dog, that's a news. So that is the state of the affairs, I think, of the media world over, where they are not really focusing on the serious issues. They are mostly kind of, sensationalizing, including the mainstream media, whether it's in US or elsewhere. There's also this kind of lack of understanding for non-mainstream media. I mean, in India, because of the English-speaking world that we stay, we think that the media which is in the West is probably the only media because we speak in that language, and therefore whatever they are saying is the gospel truth, and therefore, without understanding that there's a subtle messaging which is happening through some of these media. So what has happened in the last 20 years, certain states has taken upon themselves to create certain media houses. Now, I'm not getting into whether those states have been has been successful in doing an honest journalism or not, but they have really pumped in a lot of money. For example, Qatar, Al Jazeera, RT, Russia Today. Then there is TRT again in Turkey, which very few people are aware. These have huge reach, and these are positioning themselves as a non-mainstream media. I don't think that there is much traction which is happening in India. People are only picking up the negative news, but one can also look at developing a model based on this. I mean, DD International many years back, almost in the UPA 1 or UPA 2. I mean, UPA 1 means United Progressive Alliance led by Congress, and they had this concept of making DD International as the international channel of India. Never really happened, got bogged down with the bureaucracy. I mean, never really got the quality journalists. I mean, we probably need to hire people from from outside India to at least bring the technical part of it to make it more suave, more polished, to have an outside reach. And certain civilization ethos, particularly with regard to Buddhism, which is not really focus of the Indian media, and its outreach to Central Asia, Southeast Asia, South Asia, parts of South Asia, and even Mongolia are not something which are very attractive among the Indian media personnel. Maybe occasionally earlier, if I'm not wrong, and this I'm talking about a decade and a half back, the Indian Ministry of External Affairs used to organize some trips for journalists from India to some of these countries where they were exposed to some of these Buddhist sites and temples. But that also has kind of disappeared over the last 1.5 decades. I think that could be revived as something, because media houses on their own will not have budget for this, but definitely it can be inspired a bit from IBC or from others to create kind of an awareness on this subject. And I also kind of felt that maybe, I mean, I didn't find anybody from Central Asia here, so probably that is a missing link in terms of and I understand that this is probably a subject which is not really focused in that part of the world, but those sites are preserved in some of these countries, particularly in Uzbekistan. So, and even within India, states like West Bengal, Bihar, of course, is well known, but there are sites in West Bengal, Assam, which are Buddhist sites. But again, I mean, even the local media is not really taking up those or creating awareness about that. There are archaeological sites also in Bangladesh. The current situation apart, whenever it improves, I think there could be more focus on that. And Myanmar being our, the entry point to Southeast Asia, there should be more focus on for media houses and for channels and for social media handles and for non-alternative media to also look at how Buddhism is preserved by the society, by the state in Myanmar, as well as in Sri Lanka, because people, Indians travel there as tourists, but doesn't really pick up the threads from there and create a narrative. I think if, like today, there are dedicated social media influencers focusing only on food or only on culture. If there are social media influencers who can be dedicated only on the Buddhist circuit, global Buddhist circuit, I think that could be really helpful, which can be inspired or, encouraged from any quarter here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Debanjanji. You just spoke at the right point. And the next we have Mr. Benny, who I know for the last many years. And reading his biography, we see that Benny Leo is the editor of Eastern Horizon. I had the honor of having written an article there. Journal of the Young Buddhist Association of Malaysia. He was the editorial consultant and a contributor to the Religions and Beliefs volumes of the Encyclopedia of Malaysia. His writings have appeared in Journal of Malaysian branch of the Royal Asiatic Society, Kajian Malaysia, and in Nurturing Child and Adolescent Spirituality, Perspectives from the World's Religious Traditions. And yes, there are so many contributions. He wrote the 9 books. And what I'd like to share with you is that with respect to the media, as I indicated in the opening remark, is that people like Benny, who I know so well, we all should be inspired by such people like Benny. Why I'm saying this is that whenever we go to the universities and various institutions to give lectures talks and so forth, and I don't miss to share with them the need to think of the global, the world at large, rather than just your own religion, Buddhism, or this religion, that religion, your ethnicity. Think of the larger good. If let's say that if the Buddhists meet Christians or Hindus or Muslims or Jains, Sikhs, and then they shake hands and you feel the brotherhood, sisterhood, like a brother and sister. They're very different, bodily they're very different, but they meet, they see the oneness. So that spirit needs to be encouraged. And in this connection, as in my opening remark, I talked about the universal ethics for the world, which is holiness. They so strongly advocate for the world beyond Buddhism. Whenever I do that, people tend to take interest in this, like the university vice chancellors, the directors of these institutions, they take interest in this. And they even go to the extent of applying this in their own institutions. And the first thing that I do is, whether or not the person who said we can introduce in an institution or a university, whether or not that person is fully with this, whether or not the person has a, say, full admiration in this concept of the universal concept of brotherhood and sisterhood. Only if then I give more details. So here is a man, Mr. Benny, who is actually having a who is multifaceted and who really embodies that quality of the humanity. Very compassionate and embracing every religion, culture, and ethnicity. So let's listen to Mr. Benny, 10 minutes. Yes.
Thank you.
You can use this. Yes.
Thank you, and good afternoon. So, very good afternoon again to all venerable members of the Sangha, fellow speakers, as well as participants and friends. I think first and foremost, let me say that I'm speaking more as a Dhamma practitioner rather than a media specialist. So I would like to start by making reference to, let's see, how do I get the first slide? Can I get the first slide? Let me start my presentation by making reference to these 4 stanzas, which I think some of you are familiar with. It talks about the importance of words and the meaning behind those words. And this is taken from His Holiness Dalai Lama's commentary on the Atisha's Lamb on the Path to Enlightenment. Okay? Now, I think this is because words actually have power. And if the meaning are wrongly grasped, then this will result in much conflict and disharmony in society. So it is the role of the media to ensure that this does not happen. And I think there's much that we can learn from the Buddha's teachings. Okay, so let's look at the media today. I think the media has power and authority. Okay, I've got to do this. Right. So the media has power and authority in our modern society. So people around the world, at all economic and social levels, they are faced with multiple forms of media daily, that is both print and online. Now this includes obviously television news, radio broadcasting, newspaper articles, and now we have digital media as well. So the mass media is already an interesting part of our everyday lives. Now let's look at public expectations. The public has expectations that the media, especially in its reporting, adheres to certain professional standards and values that are ethical, honest, and objective, instead of perpetuating what is today a common term, fake news, all right, which we don't hear too much, all right, last decade. So the public expects such professionalism from the modern day media practitioners. Now the point is, what can Buddhism what inputs can we get from Buddhism? I think the Buddhist approach to media and communications places great importance on right speech, which is part of the Noble Eightfold Path. And for today's session, the other aspects will be right mindfulness, which also forms a key component. So this principle encourages individuals to speak or write words that are true, beneficial, timely, and kind. And it also discourages lying, harsh speech, harsh language, slander, and idle chatter. Now, Buddhist approach essentially urges individuals, including journalists and media specialists, to be sensitive to the words that they use and to realize that such words have an impact on others. So spreading fake news, for example, is definitely not in line with Buddhist teachings. Why? Because this is tantamount to breaking the fourth precept, which is lying that all Buddhists, at least as lay Buddhists, we're expected to uphold in our everyday life. So if we look at the importance of speech from the Buddha's teachings, is that there are actually three key factors that circle around right speech. So we have right views, we have right effort, we have right mindfulness. So for today, I'll just touch a little bit on right speech as well as right mindfulness. Now, if we look at right speech from the Buddha's teachings itself, basically we're talking about four things: to abstain from lying, to abstain from slander, to abstain from harsh speech, and to abstain from idle chatter. All right? And the Buddha also mentioned in another teaching in the Vacha Sutta that a well-spoken speech have got certain characteristics. And here he addressed the monks. A statement endowed with 5 factors, they are considered as well-spoken, not ill-spoken. And what are they? They are blameless, unfaulted by knowledgeable or wise people. Now, which 5? Then he talks about it is spoken at the right time, it is spoken in truth, truthfully, it is spoken affectionately, it is spoken beneficially, and it is spoken with a mind of goodwill. So I guess the point is for us, as Buddhists or friends of Buddhism or as media specialists, to ask whether is our speech, is it timely, is it true, is it kind, is it harmful, and most important, is it useful? Why useful? Because in another teaching the Buddha gave to Prince Abhaya Kumara Raja Sutta, he says that there are actually 6 possibilities of statements that we could make, but he only makes 2, which is he only makes statements which are true, which are useful, hopefully is pleasant most of the time, but occasionally may not be pleasant. So when a statement is true, is useful, but unpleasant to the ears, the Buddha knows the right time to say it. All right. But if a statement is true, it is useful, it is beneficial to us, and it's pleasant, he will always say it. I think that's a very important advice that the Buddha has given us. So, likewise, it's not only in the early teachings, the great Lama Atisha in his Bodhisattva Garland of Gems, something that I find really very useful is that he says, when we are in the midst of many people, we must always keep a check on what we say, keep a speech. But what happens when we are alone? When we are alone, we should always keep a check on our mind. And I think that's, again, another wonderful teaching from the great Atisha. And I think this is where it leads us to how to have a mindful thoughts rather than mindless thoughts. Right? So checking our speech becomes very essential. And right speech is mindfulness practice where we commit to greater awareness of what we are about to say before we say it. And thus, it actually offers us that freedom to choose when we want to say it, what we want to say, and also how to say it. So the Buddha gave very, very specific advice on how we should manage our speech. So we learn to restrain our speech in moments of anger, in hostility or confusion, and over time, perhaps through lojong or whatever meditation that we may have, to train the heart to be more frequently inclined towards what we would call wholesome states, kusala states of mind, which are like love, kindness, compassion, and empathy. And I think if we do that long enough, as Daniel Goleman said, we turn those states into traits. So that's what we want to do, all right? So again, the Buddha gave fantastic teachings, and the next 1-2 slides, actually the instruction Buddha gave his son, Rahula, when the son was only like 7 years old, if I'm not mistaken, 7 or 8, in the Chula Rahula Vada Sutta, right? He says, whatever we do, whatever we say, whatever we think, they're always the three dimensions of time. Before we do it, while we are doing it, and after we have done it. So here the Buddha gave us, again, very practical advice, which I think all of us, media practitioners or non-media practitioners, we can. He says, for example, it's something that we're going to do in the future, something we want to say in the future, we want to write in the future, let us reflect. Will this action of ours, it could be mental, it could be verbal, it could be bodily, is it going to cause harm? Is it going to cause conflict to us, to oneself and others? If yes, please don't do it. If no, please continue. Likewise, the Buddha says, something you are currently doing, you can say assess. This is where we have learned meditation, we have learned mindfulness, we learn to respond rather than to react. So we are able then to assess whether this mental or verbal or bodily action, is it causing harm to oneself? Is it leading to conflict in oneself and to others? Again, if it is yes, let's stop doing it. If it is no, please continue. So again, the Buddha says, well, if we have done it, something we have done in the past, let us review, let us reflect. Did this mental or verbal or bodily action, did it cause harm to me? Did it lead to conflict and to others? If so, should we do it? No, we don't. All right, and if no, okay, continue. So again, an advice the Buddha gave his son when his son was only 7 years old. All right, so I think something again we could grasp. So we look at media ethics now. There's a lot that media ethics can actually learn. So there's a critical need for media ethics because news reporting has become more and more driven by the free market. So motivated financial gains rather than reporting what is true. So media ethics, we know about that. So again, the other aspects is being ethical, all right? So I'll just skip this because these principles highlight the importance of communicating interpersonal relationships that promote peace and harmony in society. So the key aspects of all our interactions with others, this includes being sensitive to the impact of what we say or write on others. Truthfulness is key in communication, as lying or deceit goes against the principles of ethical conduct. So the media should thus value harmony and consensus so that we can all work together to find solutions. So in conclusion, let me make this final prayer for all. May all sentient beings have happiness and its causes. May all sentient beings be free of suffering and its causes. May all sentient beings never be separated from happiness and always be without suffering. And may all sentient beings be in equanimity, free of vice. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Benny, for very enriching the presentation. This is what I call as educating ourselves. So the media people here, this is a great learning opportunity, and also mentioned about the ethics. So every institution, medical institution, law, business, there is what is known as the ethics committee. So with this in mind, so this is a great education for us. Thank you, Brother Benny. So next in line we have Professor Monsak Radik. Professor Monsak is a lecturer in the Faculty of Journalism and Mass Communication at Thammasat University, Thailand. He graduated from the Faculty of Media and Communication at Bournemouth University. The title of his research is Bridging Digital Media Literacy with a Thai Context of Sati, which is mindfulness. His research interests include digital media literacy combined with Sati as self-literacy for redefining and reframing the globalized concept, in particular redesigning diverse approaches and creativity for social change. The current research topic, applying the concept of self-literacy for card game ideation, a literature review to initiate the prototype development of the digital media literacy with Sati. Very interesting. So let's see. His publication includes Bridging Digital Media Literacy with the Thai Context of Sati, the Palgrave Handbook of Media Misinformation, Gratitude Stimulates Word of Mouth More Than Words of Thanks. So here we have Professor Monsak.
Great greeting for everyone, and thank you for having me in this conclave today. Actually, it seems like my topic seems different from other, but I think that's just for the topic. Maybe I will try to clarify you all more why I use this Buddhist concept to apply to the concept of digital media literacy. So let's start with the first slide. Oh. Okay. This comes from my thesis project that I study at the Bournemouth University at the UK. The finding that I got from the research that I got two things. The first one I would like to mention about the self-literacy. The self-literacy can define into two terms, for example, as an individual with the self-awareness. And the other point is self-literacy in the meaning of the social constructural awareness. So you can see more from my first assumption framework. So the assumption framework is talking about the framework of digital media literacy. It showed about the process of when we encourage media education to cultivate critical thinking, they also encourage people to have the competency. So that's why I try to merge the concept of the mindfulness to make the people have the critical reflection, or the pari is about the Joniso Manasika, and also the concept of concentration and ethic. So that's why this is quite important, because of in the Western concept of media literacy, they also using about the, I mentioned is about the outside in, because of the Western concept try to learning by teaching, have the curriculum. For the other part, that's Ethan try to figure out is about the inside out. I think it's very important for the people to emphasize and return to focusing on the internal function as well. So that's why the outcome of the mindfulness to cultivate the critical reflection that come to the wisdom of Panya. That my assumption that would like to show everyone is about if individual have self-literacy, so it's gonna become the process of media literacy as well. So the next one, I summarize. I will try to describe you shortly. Self-literacy as the individual with self-awareness. It's just like a personal competence. Personal competence, it means that understand what happening into the one thought and emotion. When we consume the media, they also have many pop-up ideas. The thought, the emotion happen all the time, all the moment. So if we have the self-literacy, we try to reconsider, to thinking about the reflect with self-awareness. So that's why every thought and emotion are arising, existing, and then ending in the second. This is a key idea. And the other point from the self-literacy, I would like to focus on the observe the pattern of thought and emotion from the opposite ideology, norm, or injustice. For example, maybe some culture, they have just like inequality. So that's why the key point of self-literacy try to empower them to know that because of they have some opposed from cultural norms. So that's why we're gonna go to the other point of social competence in the meaning of self-literacy, that social structural awareness. So clarify the structure of self-habituation, the structure of relationship between social dominant power. I mean the self-habituation, it means that when you got something, when you influence something, when you want to react, just observe your self-habituation. For example, when you got angry, when you got hate, the rapid action, you will do something rapidly action. So mindfulness, just like a pausing moment that you stop and thinking your pattern, that you why when you're angry, why you always doing like this every time. So if you realize that and have literacy, maybe you can concern and maybe change the solution when you react with angry or when you react with hate, something like this. And then I would like to share you some point. State of mindfulness is just like a support internal function. And that I told you before, the function of sati is just provide the pausing moment to observe their own self-habituation and social power relationship. And then the key competency that I would like to mention, because of the media literacy in the Western concept tied to focusing on how they access the media, how they understand the media, how they act to the media. But the other point is very important for the internal function is listen to one's own voice and then listen to the other voice. I think the listening skill is quite important for the new era of the digital transformation that many kind of people try to forget this kind of important skill. And then from the new research that I would like to explore more, I would like to focusing on the internalization process. The card game would like to clarify about how they to realize their thought and the emotion that happen and pop up in every moment, and then how to enchant digital media literacy with the mindfulness as a self-literacy to more practical and engagement approach in daily life. One key question is about the concept of this concrete. How to spend the idea of Buddhist concept into the youngster or something like this. Maybe the pain point of this challenge is about how to adapt the concept to be easily to access something like this. So the key point of my research try to do something like this as well. How to use the concept of digital media literacy with sati mindfulness to become more practical and easily to engage with the young children or even someone that they try to engage with the social media. So the other point I would like to concrete into 4 points. The first one that I try to redefine to the framework of the card game ideation. The first point, you will see the question. I would like to conclude for you that if I would like to develop the card game to utilize the concept of digital media literacy concept, the first one, really important, the method of selecting question, how to select and develop the question for encourage player to participate in the process of critical reflection. This is the first point that I got. The second point, group dynamic. It's very important as well because of when you have experience about the game card, the group dynamic of player playing is very important. The group dynamic also to create the sharing moment, the discussing moment with playing a game card to provide a key sharing with with both the moment of competitive and moment of the cooperative as well at the same time. I think the process of group dynamic is very important for player to play and return to the self-literacy. Maybe 2 minutes, please. And the other third thing is about the balancing spread. The balancing spread is about when you play game card, it maybe visualize you to become the real world while you playing card. And also the situation that from the question, maybe you can visualize you to understand the real situation while you playing card. So that's why the balance space is between the real world and also artificial safe space while you playing card. The last point, It's about the enlightened moment and also the direct experience from the personal experience. Because of the key thing of this enlightened moment, it's not just only the joyful moment. It's just like a real life moment, and also when you understand something, when you enlighten something, it's just like a enlightened moment as well. It's not a group moment. It's not just a group enlightened moment. It's just personal experience that comes from the direct experience. So the last slide I would like to conclude is just like about the one method of selection, the design strategy for each state, and enjoy moment while playing card game, and good technique for discussion and sharing. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Monsak. Thank you so much for the amazing sharing, for the reason that I remember one gentleman who is ultra rich, and he always says that I feel so bored with my life. He has everything, and he said, I feel so bored. He's going through depression. So this is where I think that all of us, we need to incorporate this sati, the self-awareness, in our, whatever you do, your business, teaching, or your rituals, or your office work, whatever, if you can incorporate that, then your life will be very beautiful. There's no room for feeling bored. Thank you so much, Professor Monsak. So with this mind, I don't see any time for question and answers. We are running late. 2 questions, 1 question. Okay, so the moderator says 1 question. Anyone, let us be very direct, to the point. Yes, over there, please introduce yourself. Any possible? To whom you want to direct your question?
Hello, Tashi Delik. Myself is Namgyal, and I'm a Tibetan. And my question is I don't know whether my question is too political or what, but it's up to you whether you want to answer or not. My question is for Mr. Chandra of Buddhist, that since this conclave is about spreading, incorporating the Buddhist principle in the media, so I just want to ask the question that how the Mongolian media cover the religious repression in the Inner Mongolia, and what's the state of Buddhism in the Inner Mongolia? So that's the question for Mr. Chandra Buddhist. I don't know whether it's a political or not, but it's up to you whether you answer or not. So
Okay. Mr. Buddhist?
About Inner Mongolia.
Yes.
Wallah. Inner Mongolia was part of Mongolia, and it was overtaken by China in 1945. Frankly speaking, they are Mongolians, they are Buddhists, and as I just mentioned, we had a Kala Chakra at Gandham Monastery, and I think there were many Inner Mongolian Buddhists who attended the Kala Chakra. But China being a communist country, where the Communist Party is ruling, religion they say they promote, but I don't know how far the freedom of religion is in Inner Mongolia. I have not been to that part, I have not done any studies, but judging by the visitors who attended the Kala Chakra initiation in Ulaanbaatar recently, we can say that Buddhism is very much alive, especially among the Mongolians. You know, the bulk of the population in Inner Mongolian are Chinese, Han Chinese, a very few Mongolians. That was a very, encouraging sign to see Inner Mongolian Buddhists coming to Outer Mongolia to attend the Kala Chakra. So, which is, I think, I don't know whether I have answered your question or not, but I think we do have Mongolians who are still practicing. Just to say that 70 years the communist rule in Mongolia could not extinguish the flame of religious belief among the Mongolians. Similarly, the flame of Buddhism or religion in Inner Mongolia, despite the communist rule, I think is still very much alive.
Thank you so much. Okay, the main moderator is in room for more questions. Okay, no. Thank you all of you, and I'd like to conclude by saying that so while all these amazing information are being passed on to us by the the 5 brilliant speakers and later speakers to follow. At the same time, let us not expect that the whole world will change just by a single conference, number one. Number two, that simply because that there are bad medias doesn't mean that good media should feel demoralized or a hopeless world. We should not do that. In fact, what I was share with you is that this perhaps would be a good learning for all of us, including myself, that several years ago, a young Tibetan boy came to my office and who said that the last several years I've been working in an Indian company, and then I'm being paid so well. But suddenly I discovered that my life and the life of a dog, there's no difference. Let's not forget this. Media, and all of us, let's not forget this. My life and the life of a dog, there's no difference. I said, why? He said that the dog gets up at 6 o'clock or 5 o'clock and said that, I have to go look for food. And then he, at 6 o'clock or perhaps 7 o'clock, gets, I'm late for the work. He goes work. What is his job? It's just to feed your belly. The dog is doing the same thing. And then in the evening, the dog comes back. And the dog sleeps. And you come back. You're so tired and you watch a television. The dog doesn't have a television. That's the difference. And you become even more tired. And you fall asleep on the sofa. And then this is how the same day you repeat it like 365 into 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. At the end of the day, you regret. All these white hairs, what is this? Just to fill the belly. If this is your life, no doubt, as you grow older, you'll become more and more unhappy. You'll miss your youth. In short, media person, no doubt you have a huge responsibility. Don't just think of the media subject, this information, that information. But in the process of doing this, why should you not enrich your life? To make your life so beautiful, to see that whole world is like a school for you to educate. And all the citizens of the world, 8 billion human beings, they are like students. With a good heart, keep growing yourself and see your life growing. As you grow older, you become happier and happier and happier media person. If that happens, you are a successful media person. If you grow older and older and older, and the younger media, they kick you out and you regret you miss your youth. That is how you missed your youth, how you have used your life in a very unfruitful way. So with this, let us all be positive. Let's move forward. Let us not feel demoralized. Let's keep moving forward and make the world a better world. Thank you.
We've come to the end of the first session. May I please request Dr. Arvind Gupta, Director of VIF, to please give mementos to the moderator and speakers of this session. First, Venerable Geshe Dorje Damdul, Director, Tibet House, India. Dr. Sunur Verma, President, the Himalayan Dialogue, Nepal. Mr. Chandrav Burenbayar, Senior Manager, ABCP, Mongolia. Mr. Dipanjan Roy Chaudhary, Senior Assistant Editor, The Economic Times, India. Mr. Benny Leo Woon Kin, Editor, Eastern Horizon, Malaysia. And Professor Monsak Shai Viragdek, Assistant Professor, Faculty of Journalism and Mass Communication, Thammasat University, Thailand. There is a series of publication from the VIF to the speakers and moderators as well.
Some of our publications of the
Maybe the entire panel and Dr. Gupta can stand for a photograph, group photograph. Thank you. We will now break for lunch. We are running late by 1 hour. May I please request everyone to be back by 2:45 p.m. Thank you. Lunch is being served downstairs. Thank you, sir.